mighty. Not because you want to, but you have to. Be bold and no time to be bashful. Grab life by the horns like a natural. Be sharp, be quick, and be agile. Never ever let a competitor catch you. Stay ahead of whatever is trying to pass you. Though it's not a race, sometimes that's how you gotta operate.
Hello, my name is Samuel Ray. Welcome to S-Factor Labs. And this is the morning boot up, where I sit down with my coffee and just ramble a little bit about whatever topic I feel like talking about at the time. So this week I didn't have a very particular topic queued up, so I figured I would just talk about, while this is still kind of related to some experiences over the last week and so I would just talk about who I am, what I'm about, and why I do what I do. So, well, since my content is mostly related to games, video games, I'll stick around there. So, I started playing games when I was about 4 years old. When I was 3, I watched my dad play. That was in 1994. He would play Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Genesis. Then a year later, I started playing as Player 2. I mentioned this in a previous video, but yeah, I started playing with him as Tails. You know, the invincible Player 2, who, even if you fall, you'll just come back to the stage eventually. So you can contribute, but you're never really a detriment. Except maybe in the special stages if you hit the spike bombs too much. That aside though, you're never really a detriment, you're only a contributor. It was perfect for a young child who wanted to play games with his father. And then a year after that, I started playing as Sonic and my dad would play as Tails. So it was a bonding thing for me and him. I have a lot of fond memories playing games on that Sega Genesis with him, and that exact Sega Genesis still works to this day. They really don't make consoles like they used to. Those things were durable and built to last. In fact, my dad still has an unboxed Sega Genesis stored away somewhere. It's crazy. So, playing so many different games with him though. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 I more played by myself. But there was like an X-Men game, X-Men 2, The Clone Wars we played a lot. We played a ton of NBA Jam, such a good arcade game. And its follow-up, NBA Hang Time. What else did we play a lot of? We played a lot of an F1 racing game, I remember. I don't remember exactly what game it was. But, I think that was mostly our repertoire. It was like Sonic games, NBA Jam, NBA Hang Time. Oh, Sports Talk Football. Kind of a predecessor to the Madden series. It was like one of the first football video games to have voiced commentary. It was compressed audio, but it sounded really good for the time, actually. It was one of the pioneers of voice lines in video games. Definitely ahead of its time. And even my mother played games with me. There were games she enjoyed. She loved the Disney platformers of the time. Tough as nails, so you had to rent them from places like Blockbuster and Family Video more than once in order to be able to get good enough to beat it, because they made it so difficult. It was really hard to clear it on a first playthrough or even your first week, and rentals were only for a week, so unless you paid them to extend the rental. And back then we couldn't do payments over like the internet, so you had to go back into that store anyway. So she loved the Disney platformers like Lion King, Jungle Book, Aladdin being one of my favorite games of all time, actually, from that era. It holds up even today. And then and Cool Spot. So it was a platformer, kind of a run and gun platformer, because interestingly enough, but starring the 7-Up mascot at the time, the little red spot on the bottles and cans. So he would come off the bottle. It was like a big 2-liter bottle. He would pop off of it and then have sunglasses. It was quirky, but it was actually surprisingly well made and fun. Back then, licensed games are actually pretty good. So It was something I played with my mother and my father, and then later on my brother, after he was born, and even before that, my friends. It was always kind of a social thing. It was around my teenage years when I became a bit more of a bit more reserved, for a while a bit more of a loner during the edgy phase, where I started playing a lot more single-player games. JRPGs like Tales of Symphonia, really just gripping me and keeping me hooked and from beginning to end. But even during that time, I still had my few close friends, and I would play games with them often. And this was the GameCube era, so we had no shortage of fun local multiplayer games. Heck, Mario Kart Double Dash and Kirby Air Ride alone, like, just lived forever on the GameCube for us. Those two party racing games were some of the best of all time, in my opinion. And Double Dash is still to this day my favorite Mario Kart game. But, yeah, so there always was that social element, unless I was playing something single player and story driven. Then I would say in my young adult years, well, things got weird. Something happened when I was 19, and the ripple effects of it, I'm not going to go into it, but the ripple effects affected me for a decade. So it affected me until I was like 29. Definitely the darkest decade, darkest 10 years of my life. Depression and withdrawing from everyone except for the few closest ones. For good reason though, considering there was some people who were just not being great people. So I was very shrewd and slow to trust for good reason. And then near the end of that decade, all of my friends, not even near the end, I would say about 7 years in, all of my friends ended up getting married. And, as happens, our paths kind of started to diverge a bit. We still talk, but we just don't have time to hang out anymore. They're busy, they got wives, and, in the case of a couple of them, they have a kid. So, that makes you busy. And I completely understood that, never resented them or resented that at all. It just meant I had fewer people to enjoy the social aspect of games. And for a while I tried online gaming, especially the fighting game genre. I really latched onto that for a while. I had played fighting games since 2002 with Soul Calibur 2 on the GameCube. The only reason I got it was because Link from Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, was in that game, and he was on the box art. And I enjoyed Ocarina of Time on, at the time, my friend's N64, as well as the Smash Brothers series. So I tried it and loved it and stuck with the series all the way up until recent years when, even though I tried Soul Calibur 6, it's just not for me. It's changed too much. But that's a topic for a different day. And I've been playing a lot of games in the series, or in the genre, more accurately. A lot of franchises. Soul Calibur, Tekken, Virtua Fighter. Mostly the 3D ones that were similar to, obviously, the first fighting game I got into, which was Soul Calibur. So that kind of set the bar. But when it comes to that era of gaming for me, I would say it was around the late Xbox 360, early PS4, when I was trying to play games online more. But being who I am, I'm slow to call someone a friend. Friend is a word I reserve only for those I feel truly comfortable enough and trust them enough to open up about personal matters. And I'm a very private person. I keep my personal matters close to the chest, especially with people I meet online. So, I'm slow to call someone truly a friend. Now, yeah, I got my community here, and they are very important. And I enjoy hanging out with them in my streams, chatting with them, opening up my game lobbies, if it's a multiplayer game, to them, to whoever's in chat. And I have a few who frequent my streams, and I definitely appreciate them a lot. That's a different dynamic, though, than a close personal friend, you know? So, my close local friends, I stopped being able to play, you know, gather together with them, hang out with them much anymore. We just talk from time to time. So it was mostly playing online and playing with my brother. And it's just been an interesting transitionary period in my life in general. I was still dealing with the dark period of my life. And, you know, having less time, being able to spend less time with the people you're truly close to, it doesn't help. Now, I'm not blaming them, because of course life goes where it goes. You know, they found someone they wanted to share the rest of their life with, and who am I to try and be selfish to prevent that? Not that I would ever even want to, because that's just not me. So I handled, you know, dealt the best I could. I tried streaming on and off from like 2015, but because of life, college and stuff, I just could never really find a good rhythm. You know, a good flow. Find my niche. But I think part of the reason too is that I was doing a lot of streaming fighting games, and at the time it was when I was kind of finding how much the genre's, you know, common game design sensibilities was changing to appeal to the, you know, ever shrinking average attention span. And since I'm not in that crowd, my more defense oriented playstyle, more reactionary defense, like a fencer or a outboxer, someone who stays at arm's reach, you know, just out of effective range of the opponent, coming in and out, and peppering with jabs or pokes, and then finding an opening and only really striking decisively when I see an opening, or I lock onto a habit that I can exploit, or something of the sort. But the genre changed to an extent where it's like, on its core mechanical level, started forcing players to be aggressive, because that's what most people find entertaining compared to the slower, methodical, defensive playstyle that comes naturally to me. And that's been my natural style in everything. Like, I'm an analytical type. I like to think through my options in a situation if I can. Like, when it comes to decision making, think through my options and then come up with the option that has the most probable positive outcome, or the best possible outcome, and then act on it. Fortunately, I'm not the kind who lets the analyzing create paralysis, because when a situation comes up where I need to make instant decision making, I'm pretty reliable in that, actually, and I've got quick enough decision making and reflexes to do that. That's why I'm such a good driver, and That's never been in a car accident once in my life. Not even once. Never had a collision. And I've been driving for 17 years. That's kind of rare. Like, my insurance company has never had to pay out anything. And I've avoided car accidents. I've avoided more than I've ever come close to causing. So I'm a defensive driver. Again, there it is, defensive, right? I literally have had a lot of situations where someone has come close to hitting me, and I've prevented that from happening, while also not putting myself at any more risk or anyone else at any risk. Just taking stock of the situation in a split second and making the decision that was best. So I'm good at that kind of stuff. That just fits my natural skill set. But fighting games started making it so that you had to be aggressive, and if you made a read on someone, it had to be a prediction read. You could never really excel by reacting and doing what's best in the moment. You had to predict, because of the speed of attacks, the slowness and weakness of defensive mechanics, and all that kind of stuff. So I was trying to stream a lot of fighting games, and I was getting frustrated with more of them than I was having fun, so it just didn't stick, you know, and it didn't help me have motivation to keep streaming. So I was very spotty, very, very spotty, ever since, like, from 2015 all the way up to 2021. Yeah, 2021. 2021 is when I started streaming with consistency, once a week, sometimes twice a week, and hit a Twitch affiliate in 3 months of that. But Honestly, that kind of came with a different portion of my life. And all throughout my life, I was raised differently than most of the people around me. Um, I'm a person of versatility. So I'm of a scientific mind, an analytical kind of mind, but I also don't shy away from religion. I just don't like to get involved in divisive religious discussions on the internet, because the internet is where you're going to find the most unreasonable people, generally. But I combine aspects of religion and, well, Christianity, religion, and science, and my own logic based off of experience and observation. Because one of the things that sets us humans apart from the beasts is our ability to use logic and reason. To look at what we can observe, look at facts and precedent, history, and come to a logical conclusion. Emotion is another thing that makes us human, but that comes paired with our ability to temper that emotion with logic so that we can do what's actually best instead of acting on impulse. Because acting on impulse and instinct is what beasts do. We humans, we're above that. We should be able to, even if we're feeling strong emotion, use our brains to understand each other, to communicate clearly, because communication is another thing that sets us apart. We communicate in a much more nuanced and detailed way than any animal can. Some animals communicate, but it's not language. It's not spoken language like humans are capable of. So, obviously you don't lean too hard into any one aspect that makes us human. It's the whole of all the aspects that make us who we are as a race, the human race. And our ability to logic and reason is very important, and it should be used more to avoid tribalism and divisiveness and conflict, but it doesn't, and that's because humans are also very imperfect and flawed. But I try to be as balanced and versatile as I can. I have a variety of interests, so I'm not stuck to just one thing. I don't latch on to, say, one game in terms of gaming, and that becomes my life, like many in the fighting game community or the MMORPG genre, those lifestyle genres, as it's been called, where you find one game and you just play that almost religiously, and it just becomes part of your identity. I don't do that. So, I'm a man of variety. I get bored if I play just one thing too much. I have to mix it up. And that's just all aspects of my life. I need to mix things up. I need to combine elements from so many different facets. And I feel like that does make me pretty darn balanced, all things considered. So, in my approach, I was raised with good values, strong morals, or a strong moral compass, more accurately, the ability to reason myself, use my own conscience and my own reasoning ability to make good moral decisions. That's what a moral compass is. And that's what a conscience is supposed to be able to help you do. So I was raised to think for myself, to be an independent thinker, not to just follow the crowd or follow what others are doing or saying or thinking. They taught me to use my brain. They also taught me to use my vocabulary. I was raised on small minds use small words. That's something my father used. And my parents both came from very rough areas. They came from the hood. So, and some of the worst in America. So they got out of there through sheer effort and determination and hard work. So they didn't want to be just another statistic, and they succeeded. And then they met each other in college, and then they had me. So I am literally the product of strong work ethic, conviction to be better as an individual, to not follow the crowd, to break the shackles of one's environment. That whole nature versus nurture thing. Well, they surpassed both to become better individuals. And then after they met each other, they helped each other to become even better. So, individualism, in a positive way, is my family's culture. And as that being, as a result of that, we've never fully slotted into any one particular culture or demographic or, you know, uh, tribe, I guess you could say. We always had each other. That was who we knew we could depend on. My father, my mother, myself, my brother. That was our immediate family. We knew we could depend on each other, and we always had each other. We always had each other's backs. But that aside, we were very shrewd regarding pretty much anyone else, especially considering a lot of people in our extended family are very unsavory and untrustworthy. So even family is not defined by blood for us. I grew up with family being the people who show it by action, who earn it with action. Not just words, because words without actions are worthless. It's the actions that make it real, that make it valid. So, even though we have a lot of family, we're not too close to most of them. And we've had close friends who have been more like family. So trust is definitely a commodity in the culture I grew up in. So my parents raised me to be a hard worker. They raised me to have, that good work ethic. They raised me to be intelligent. My mother had me reading at the age of 3. I was at a kindergarten level, reading at a kindergarten level at the age of 3. By the time I was in kindergarten, I was reading 2nd grade level. Because she worked with me every single day, teaching me phonetics. They called it learning with phonics back in the day. So that I could sound out words and come to a pretty accurate conclusion, even if it was a word I didn't know. Which helps me to be able to read even words in other languages nowadays, actually. If I have a basic understanding of how their phonetics work, I can figure out how to pronounce words in their languages. Because that's how I was taught to learn. And then, to work it out in myself, using a logical method. And then, which kind of leans into the whole scientific method tendencies I have. And then they taught me to use my mind and that vocabulary to convey myself, my thoughts, my emotions, instead of falling back to profanities, which are all derivatives of very simple words and overused words, in all honesty, which causes them to really lose their impact anyway. Honestly, since I'm someone who never uses profanity, if I ever do use profanity, it would hit harder because I never use it. So some people argue, profanity is meant for impact, emphasis in ways that other words can't. But if you use it too frequently, even that is becomes an invalid point, an invalid argument. And at this point, there are so many people who use it every other word or every other sentence. So that's kind of the case for most people. So now you have kind of an idea who I am, why I am the way I am, why I speak differently than most you'll ever meet, why I carry myself differently. Well, actually, for that point there too, it was a few years ago after I came out of that dark decade in my life that I kind of found my feet, my footing. I figured out how to let go of certain things, even things that I will never have answers to, that I will never understand what was true or what was not. I'll never understand why. I've finally figured out how to let all that go and decided to improve my life. Just something clicked and I was like, I'm done being depressed. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to make something of my life. I'm going to do something with my time, something productive. So that was part of that was starting to exercise, do a workout routine more, get in better shape. And life has made that a little difficult because life do what it do. But so it's an on and off thing, but I'm still trying. And then I took my, ever-present hobby of gaming, which served so many different purposes, social and otherwise, and to escape the bad a little bit, and decided to make something, use it for something more productive, and use it as a creative outlet, because in middle school, I did go to a audio video broadcasting school, like radio and TV. And I mean, since I learned how to read at a young age and how to speak at a very young age, and I've learned public speaking skills from a pretty young age, that's why I'm pretty well spoken. I speak very clearly. When I was a teenager and my voice got deep, I would mumble a lot. As many teenagers do, and honestly, as many adults never really outgrow. But my parents constantly were like, speak up, enunciate. I cannot understand a thing you're saying, because my voice is baritone. And then, so then if you mumble, all you hear is the bass in my voice. They could not understand a word I was saying. So I learned to bring my vocal tone up a bit and speak more clearly, which I guess lends itself to what people have very frequently described as my radio voice, saying that they could imagine me being like a news anchor or a radio announcer kind of guy, or like an audiobook narrator, something along those lines. And I used to have interest in voice acting, but well, that didn't pan out, and it's honestly, it's such a cutthroat and kind of tribalistic, you know, or cliquey industry. And it's a good thing I didn't get into radio and TV, because that has become very politically driven. You know, a lot of the news stations, for example, are influenced by their political leanings or the government itself. So, and as someone who stays completely out of matters of politics, aka apolitical, as in no politics, this probably was for the best that I didn't get into any of those. But hey, at the time I didn't know, but now I have my own channel on YouTube. I have my own Twitch channel. I can put into use my skills in those fields, as well as the little bit of video editing I had learned in high school, and something I continue to try and improve, because I do enjoy video editing. It's pretty relaxing. You know, on my own terms. I get to control what's allowed and what's not on it. So I can keep it on, you know, on brand with my own values and what I am and am not comfortable with having involved. So, hey, it all worked out in the end, I guess. But, and I'm definitely working on expanding this, you know, this content creation brand and everything. So, keep an eye on out for that, because I've got some announcements coming for that. But yeah, so I decided to make something, you know, do something creative with my interests and my skills. And there's a phrase that I recently heard that really spoke to me, and it was, be the person you needed when you were younger, right? And it makes sense, you know? Or be the kind of friend you want to have. You know, just there's a lot of different phrases that are good. I guess some people would say mantras, but good phrases to live by. And then, you know, the golden rule of treat others how you'd like to be treated, that's actually inaccurate. It's treat others how they want to be treated, because everyone's different. How you want to be treated is not going to be how person A is going to be treated, and person B will want to be treated differently than how person A is treated. Everyone's different. So don't treat people how you would want to be treated. That's actually a selfish way to look at it. Treat others how they would like to be treated. So, yeah, and that's, if you use that at the core of how you treat people, then you're going to treat everyone pretty well. You know, or at least the majority of people you meet. Some will make it very difficult, and that's understandable. And so others act in a way that doesn't really deserve much respect, beyond the most basic of basic human respect. And that's fine, but just don't be an active jerk to people. Don't actively be a jerk, more accurately. So, you know, I decided, along with my other self-improvement stuff, I decided to turn my interest into something creative, and something that could perhaps be a positive impact on others. You know, because another thing about being humans is, to be a good person, you should be a good impact, you know, positive impact on the lives of those you know, in the lives you touch. So I went through a dark period where, you know, I felt pretty alone. So I figured I would create a safe and clean environment around my content and my streams, where people don't have to worry about all the divisive and contentious aspects that just they're bombarded with in the world around us, in society. So in my spaces, no political or divisive socio-political topics are allowed. Your political or sociological beliefs and stuff, creeds, they don't matter here. As long as you can treat people well, as long as you can leave that at the door and treat everyone well in this community, then you are welcome. Simple as that. If you can respect each other, then that's fine. It doesn't matter if person A is Republican, person B is Democrat. Here in my community, neither of those matter. Neither of those are going to be points of contention, so don't make it points of contention. I will not hesitate to kick out someone who's being divisive. And then, since I am someone who naturally doesn't even use profanity in my daily life, and I don't exactly play a character in my content, I'm just myself, then my content, it's just fitting that my content, my community, stay all ages. Safe for all ages. So PG rated, because while I don't use profanity or behave, sexually in any kind of public fashion or with people, use innuendo or anything of that sort, because I believe in everything in its proper place and time, and things of that matter, in most settings, they do not belong. So just don't do it. Have consideration for the people around you and consideration for propriety. So this community is where that stuff just does not belong, and my content as well, and that's how it will remain, because that's part of who I am, and I have the conviction to be myself regardless of if people like me or not. The ones who are okay with it, or who can at least respect it, are the ones that will deserve my time. Simple as that. If you don't like it, you don't have to engage. You stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine. But so far, I haven't met much negativity, honestly, regarding being how I am as a content creator. The people who have been around in my streams, my comment section of my videos, and my Discord server have all been really nice and really respectful of the rules. And the ones who didn't care for some of the rules, they saw their way out, and that's fine, So things have been pretty cool, honestly. And apparently just in the VTuber scene, which I am technically a VTuber since I use an avatar, and the reason I use an avatar, though I based this avatar on myself, I actually closely based it on my real appearance, because I didn't want to play a different character, and the lab coat, kind of look, it suits my personality, because people have called me Doc or Professor because of my knowledgeable nature and the way I convey my well-analyzed and well thought-out conclusions and logical thought processes and stuff is, the clinical way I go about it. It's fitting. It was a nickname given to me, and that's what inspired the design of my outfit. And, the best monikers are those that you don't give yourself. They're given to you by others, right? So, since others gave me Professor and Doctor, I decided to go with that. Dr. Sam. Dr. Samuel Ray. So, that's the theming behind my avatar and why, but the reason I use the avatar is because I have Tourette's syndrome. Now, a more mild case than most. I don't have the coprolalia, so I don't have the outbursts of, inappropriate phrases or profanities and stuff, or whatever the brain considers inappropriate for the setting, then the brain forces you to say as an outburst. I do not have that portion of it. My tics are more, they're in the vocal cords, so I'll make a slight sound that is pretty hard to hear unless you're relatively close to me. And it's in the muscles. It's muscle tics in the neck and the jaw. So my jaw is usually, the muscles in my jaw are constantly flexing or frequently flexing, and in my neck as well. That's why my neck is always so tight and why I'm always, stretching it side to side and popping it. I really need to see a chiropractor, but that's besides the point. So since I have Tourette's syndrome, I noticed while I was trying to do streams with a webcam on. While reviewing a VOD, I noticed that having a webcam on me, like a webcam with the actual, showing me to others, that feeling of having eyes on me, being watched, basically, being watched aggravates the tics. It makes them happen more frequently. And then, once I became aware of that, the way Tourette's works is the more aware you are of a tic, the more it's going to happen. The more you try to suppress it, the more it's going to happen. Though, to be fair, I have learned how to suppress it in certain settings where it's, beneficial to do so. But then when I go home and relax, the tics happen more. They're multiplied for a little while. So that's just how it works, Fortunately, I was diagnosed at a young enough age. I think I was about 9 or 10 when I was diagnosed, clinically diagnosed with it. So I had a lot of time to figure out how to function despite the tics and even the mental effects. It does affect the way my brain works. I think differently than most in some ways. I'm very hypersensitive to sensations, positive and negative. As a child, I couldn't handle tags in the back of my shirt. We didn't know why, but since I was a little child, my mom would just cut out the tags, and that's because the scratchy feeling on the back of my neck was a irritating sensation, and because I have Tourette syndrome, I could not ignore it. I could not work past it. It was literally out of my mental ability. So, fortunately nowadays tagless shirts is a norm now, but back then it wasn't. And in other ways, I've found ways. I have the mental wherewithal to work around them, around the little idiosyncrasies that having Tourette's gives me. I have a propensity to hyperfocus or to be highly distractible. That's why I go on tangents so much in these rambles. While the tangents are still related, it's just a tendency of mine when having discussion. Of course, it apparently, depending on the person, it can make for really good conversation, and I have been called a conversationalist and pleasant to talk to many times. So it's not exactly a bad thing, but there are some times where I have to force myself to stay on point, to stay on topic, It's when I'm speaking in a relaxed fashion that I tend to tangent a bit more, like in this video. And then, that highly distractible nature, or highly, hyper-focused. So if I'm not fully engaged in what I'm doing, then I am super distractible. Almost like I have ADD. But it's not ADD, it's Tourette's, and Tourette's is kind of loosely associated with ADD, or loosely related. But if I am fully engaged in what I'm doing, or I'm enjoying what I'm doing, then I hyper-focus, and the quality of my work in whatever I'm doing goes through the roof. I become peak efficiency and quality and such, but then it becomes harder to get my attention. So if I'm hyper-focused on something, I can lose track of time, I can forget what I was doing, or if someone sends me a text message or a message or whatever on Discord, and I don't reply immediately, I'll forget that message even exists, and other such things like that. So there's definitely downsides that I have to function despite, and work around. So I have to set my phone to constantly remind me on intervals when I have a notification that I haven't checked, every minute or 3 minutes or something like that, so that it's annoying enough that I can't ignore it. Stuff like that, I have to find ways around it. But having the tics like that with a webcam on was something I just could not turn off. So I decided to try out an avatar, since I had actually watched some VTubers from time to time, and it was a growing industry at the time. So I'm like, okay, it had just had its boom when I was thinking through this. And so I decided to go ahead and get myself a design and then an avatar, and hey, it allows me to relax, be more myself, while still being able to convey my thoughts through my movements. I'm actually working on getting hand tracking for while I'm streaming, and better face tracking, because a lot of my expressiveness comes out in my hand gestures and in my facial expressions. So, at least when I allow myself to. Depending on the setting, I can be pretty poker face, but When I'm, relaxed or comfortable, then yeah, it comes out in my hand gestures and my facial expressions and my voice. So those being things that all can be conveyed through a VTuber avatar with the right technology and the right setup. So yeah, and being a tech guy myself, having learned to use my first PC back when I was 5 years old, yeah, you know, it's just something that kind of suits me. Though I don't really fit into the VTuber culture. That much is certain. I mean, just by nature of being, you know, a clean content creator and a clean individual in just my daily life, in my speech and conduct, that sets me apart from 90% of the VTubers. Let's just be completely honest. Plus, I don't appropriate the Japanese isms, basically, um, and that are perpetuate the culture because VTubing comes from Japan and is kind of spun off of Japanese idol culture, like musician idols, whatever. I it just those don't suit me. I don't use the Japanese phrases and terms. I don't use the Japanese mannerisms, behavioral mannerisms. I'm me, I'm just going to be me. So I'm going to be different from all the other VTubers. I'm basically just a normal guy streamer with a VTuber avatar, basically. So I kind of, like always, kind of at the outer edges of all the different circles that I can, get along with. Being such a person of variety and variety interest and knowledge, I always have been able to get along with all sorts of different types of people, but never truly in the center of any one circle. But, when you are a content creator and you're building a community around that, you kind of have to be at the center of that circle and the driving force of that community. So that's another reason why I started the content creation that I did, And in doing so, I can make it a clean, all ages, safe, non-divisive, non-controversial space. And I have the conviction to stick with that, even if doing more controversial things, being more prone to using profanity and innuendo, especially since a lot of people consider profanity to be real. That person's being real because they're not censoring themselves. But I'm like, I see that and I'm like, yo, I don't use profanity in my daily life. What you see here is me being real and genuine. So, that umbrella statement is completely not accurate for all cases. But at the same time, I do know that I'm an outlier, not the norm. So it is what it is. Like I said, I'm used to being different from pretty much everybody around me wherever I go for some reason or another. I mean, heck, I'm a mixed race boy, or mixed nationality boy. I've never been able to see myself visually represented in media. There's never anyone in media who looks like me, but I think that actually benefited me because I learned from a young age how to identify and relate with, identify with and relate to people based on things that are not superficial, not surface level. Look at their personality traits, their mannerisms, their goals, their values, things like that, things that actually matter, things that actually make us who we are. Those are the things that allowed me to relate to people and characters in fiction and such, not how they look on the outside or their appearance or their orientation or their biological sex or anything like that. I could relate to female characters just as well as I can relate to male characters. I can relate to people who have religious beliefs that differ from mine. I can relate to people who have no religious beliefs. I can relate to people who are very scientifically driven. I can relate to people who disagree with science in a lot of cases. Well, maybe not that one so much because I am very much a man driven by logic. So if you resist logic, and logic is, true logic is based on reality. Reality is what we can observe either through directly or through its something's impact on other things or through precedent set by history. Logic is based on reality. Reality is what it is, regardless of a person's perspectives or emotions or knowledge of it. You don't have to know something exists for it to exist, because that thing exists is reality. Whether or not you know it doesn't influence reality. So if you're someone who refutes reality, then that's one of the rare few types of people that I just can't get along with. You know, the people who put feelings over facts, the people who put subjective perspective above reality. And that's fine, because those aren't the kind of people I want to really spend much time with anyway. But yeah, being a VTuber, I mean, while I'm not really your standard VTuber, it suits me. It suits me quite well. It allows me to relax, to be genuine. Yeah, I'm different, so I lean into it. You know, I take pride in being different. I don't see it as a reason to be upset or depressed, or to try and fit in with others. No. If you like who I am, then we'll get along just fine. Or if you're okay, you can respect me, you know, my values and who I am, we'll get along just fine. Even better if you enjoy what I offer, or the community that I run, then I wholeheartedly welcome you. And I definitely look forward to interacting with you in Discord, playing games with you on Twitch, or seeing your comments in the YouTube videos, or, you know, podcast reviews, or on Twitter. So yeah, that's who I am. That's the conviction I have, you know, and I'm going to do what I do, even if it's the least profitable course of action, because being inflammatory is rewarded on the internet nowadays, the social media age. Being political is rewarded more. Being being sexual, you know, or sexually liberated is championed by a lot of people and is rewarded financially very often. I go against the grain in all of that, but I have the conviction to stick with it, because that's being true to who I am, you know? So dislike me for it if you'd like, or like me for it if you'd like. That's your choice, but I'm still going to be who I am. That is who I am. And what really inspired this topic was I was having a discussion on against my better judgment, I guess, on Reddit. I was trying to see if there were any tabletop RPG systems that are sci-fi based and that are not partisan. They are non-partisan. They are not, you know, direct messaging, or not messaging in direct support of any particular political party. Because I don't want that in my entertainment. I don't force that onto other people, so I don't want, and you know, being apolitical, you know, and a non-engaging party, basically, I don't engage with any of the parties. I wanted to see if there was a tabletop system that is, you know, that suits me quite well. I love sci-fi way more than fantasy, and I wanted something that isn't going to try and make me, you know, participate as a person of a particular party, you know, political party, or that has, you know, ingrained messaging in support of any one particular party. Messaging, propaganda, whatever you want to say it, you know? And so many people were so pedantic and honestly kind of aggressive about it. And I'm just like, wow, this is stupid. People telling me that apolitical doesn't exist. Like, I am a living example of that. I do not engage at all, in the slightest, with our society's politics. I refuse. That's part of who I am. Always has been, always will be. And these people want to try and tell me what I believe or what I think, and I'm like, nope, I am done. I thanked the people who were helpful, took their suggestions down on a notepad, and then I just literally deleted that entire thread and all vestiges of me in that thread, because I'm like, how crazy is it that you can't even be a non-engager and have people respect that? And that just solidified in my mind the importance of doing what I do, and, you know, continuing to stick with my convictions and having this space, you know, my content, my community, be free of that stuff. You know, it's so hard to come across nowadays. All this divisive stuff is thrust into our face all the time. I'm going to be one who doesn't. I'm going to be a content creator who doesn't. And even if it's never becomes a thing that makes me money and is able to become like a part-time profession, which unfortunately I would have to start making money in order to be able to justify putting as much time into content creation as I would like to. But until then, I simply have to treat it as a hobby and put more of my time into work and other aspects of my life, because you have to make money to eat, right? And pay the bills. And I've got bills. I'm an adult, you know? I got bills to pay. So even if this never makes money though, because I have seen how much faster growth is when you're a little more controversial or more, suggestive, sexually suggestive, or use profanity more and all that stuff. Those people tend to see faster growth. Just statistically speaking, they see faster growth. They get more engagement. They get more eyes on them. What's the word I'm looking for? They get more exposure. But they also tend to get more issues, more annoying viewers, more drama, more controversy, more irritations, and in some cases, unrest from feeling unsafe. So yeah, this is going to be a bit of a slower road for sure. Slow and steady, and maybe it will never become anything profitable, in which case it'll have to remain a hobby. But it's a hobby that I think is worthwhile to have from someone like me, and I like creating stuff using my, passions for games and my unique traits and skills. So it doesn't matter if you believe in what I value. I am going to be who I am. I am Samuel Ray, Dr. Sam, known, to others, Coach Sam to a few, and I'm going to remain who I am. I'm not going to let anyone else change me. No one should do that. Have the conviction to be yourself. So that's the core of myself. And that's going to be the core of what I do here. It'll continue to be so. So this is going to be a space where you're welcome regardless of your affiliations, as long as you're not, as long as you're able to be good to people. That's literally it. If you're decent, if you try to be a decent person, then I welcome you. And this is going to be a space for all ages. So I'm never going to involve games or media with copious amounts of gory violence or vanity or innuendo or, political partisan messaging. I'm never going to let people try to turn my space into stuff that's about that. I'm not going to let anyone try to push that kind of stuff in my community or my content. And yeah, and I'm not going to let anyone try to take advantage of anyone else in my community. So if you enjoy this stuff, please subscribe, follow, like, all that stuff, depending on your platform. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, leave a comment on your thoughts. Do you have experiences that are similar to any of mine? Do you have thoughts and feelings on some of these topics, these matters that I spoke of that are similar or differ? Feel free to let me know. Just keep it civil, okay? I only engage if it's going to be civil discussion. If you're going to attack me, then I'm not going to entertain that. But if you're willing to be, reasonable, civil, or kind even, then yeah, let's talk. Whether it be on Twitter, in the comments section, in the reviews, because this is also going to be on podcast platforms, all of that. And I hope to have you along for the ride in whatever I do going forward. I've got ideas, I've got plans, and you're going to hear more about that soon. So that's going to call it for this episode of the Morning Boot Up. This is my longest one yet, but it's something that I felt compelled to talk about, especially after that Reddit experience. I'm just like, yeah, it's important to establish who I am, what I'm about, and through that, what my boundaries are, you know? And I've never been one who's been afraid to convey all that stuff and to stick to my guns. So I figured I'd just do that here, since this is the perfect platform for it. Alrighty, I will see you next week, hopefully, if I can think of a good topic, which honestly, as I just go about life and playing my games and stuff and interacting with people, I pretty much always come up with something. So, most likely, see you next week, and I'm going to try to stream again next week as well. I'm trying to stream once a week. We'll see if I can keep it up, but work has been changing its shifts on me, so I've been having to be very flexible, you know, so my schedule's been very fluid, and it comes with the territory. But what can you do? You know, I'm looking for a different job right now as well, and seeing if there's ways I can start making money doing what I enjoy here in my content as well. So more on that to come. All right, this is Samuel Ray. I'm gonna head out and get on with the rest of my day. You have a great morning, afternoon, evening, or night, whatever time it is in your area of the world. Hope you have a great one. See you soon.